Key leaders of World War II. But before we begin, this video is sponsored by, well, not by anybody, but if you are interested in sponsoring my channel, please get in contact with me at the below information. All right, back to our video. This video is about the key leaders of World War II. Now, when we think leaders of World War II, we have to break down World War II into two main factions. The first one is the Axis powers. The second one, the Allied forces. Now, the Axis powers consisted of three main countries. They were Nazi Germany, Italy, Fascist Italy, and Japan. Now, what all these three countries had in common were their governments were extremely fascist. And that's what brought them together. Now, the other faction were the Allied forces, or Allied powers. And they consisted of the United States, the United Kingdom, and very loosely the Soviet Union, even though they really never officially joined the Allied forces, but towards the end, they were part of the Allied forces. And these countries were mainly democratic, with the exception of the Soviet Union. Their main focus and their job was to stop the Axis powers from aggressively expanding their territory. Now, to the leaders. In the Axis powers, we start off with Adolf Hitler of Nazi Germany. Now, Adolf Hitler, originally born in Austria, migrated to Germany and founded the Nazi Party. Nazi Party wound up taking over Germany, and Hitler was installed as their leader. Italy, led by Benito Mussolini. Mussolini came into power in the 1920s, and the Axis powers was his idea. He was the architect. Hitler, however, was the enforcer. He's the one that had the ability to expand his territory rapidly, and he had the ability to make things happen. But the Axis powers were Mussolini's work. Japan. You had Emperor Hirohito. Emperor Hirohito was sort of the fanboy of the Axis powers. He really had no executive power. He was just the main figurehead of Japan. Now, however, Hideki Tojo, I consider him a leader of one of the Axis powers? No, because he answered to the emperor. But Hideki Tojo called the shots. Now we go to the Allied forces. Allied forces in the United States, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt had been president for 8 years already when World War II started, and this was uncharted territory for him because the United States at that point had not been in war in over 20 years. Now the United States was at war. They were getting behind the economic depression, and they had their sights focusing on stopping the Axis powers from gaining more territory and possibly invading the United States. In the UK, you had Prime Minister Winston Churchill. Initially, you had Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain, but he was replaced by Churchill because he was a little too friendly with the Nazis. In the Soviet Union, you had Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin came to power after Lenin's death in 1923-1924. Originally, it was just Soviet Union was going to be a two-leader type arrangement where Stalin and Leo Trotsky were to rule together, but Stalin became sole ruler of the Soviet Union. So these leaders, what were their outcomes? Which leaders, whatever became of them? Well, of course, Hitler at the end, or towards the end of World War II, Allied forces were closing in on him. He wound up taking his own life. Mussolini People eventually turned against him, they rebelled, deposed him, and he was later executed. Hirohito, out of all of the Axis powers, probably had the best outcome because he himself voluntarily surrendered to the United States. And because of that, he was not put on trials during the Tokyo trials, and he was able to keep his position as Emperor of Japan. FDR, of course, did not live to see the end of World War II. He passed away in April of 1945. Winston Churchill went on to serve another term as Prime Minister, living 20 years after the war ended. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin lived another 10 years after the war, but Joseph Stalin's plan was to expand the USSR so vast that it could never be invaded again. Now, Stalin was then succeeded by Nikita Khrushchev. So, 6 leaders, two types of government, and one goal. One goal basically was for world domination. So, tell me what you think. If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe, and if you want to add anything, the comment section are open.